Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I'm doing my August wrap-up today, so I'll be chatting about all the books that I read last month. I listened to quite a few novellas on Audible just because they gave me this 99 cents a month discount for 3 months, so I took it and I took a look at their Audible Plus catalog and I downloaded all the romances that sounded good. I'll probably make a video about all the romances on Audible Plus in a little bit, probably after my discount ends. But yeah, I have 17 books to talk about today, so let's just get started. The first book that I read was one of my Audible Plus novellas. This is The Honeymoon Crashers by Christina. I gave some 4 stars. I actually liked it a little bit better than The Unhoneymooners, which this novella is a sequel to. It's about the sister who dumps her cheating ex and she finally gets her own romance. It's a wedding romance. Ami, the heroine, she is helping to plan her twin sister's wedding in Hawaii, and the hero here is the groom's best man. It's very much an opposites attract kind of romance. Ami's a perfectionist who wants everything to go super smoothly, whereas Brody is a surfer bro who's like a go with the flow kind of guy. But they do have to work together for this wedding, and the reason why they are doing so much is that Olive, the bride, she thinks that she wants a low-key wedding, but her twin sister knows otherwise. She knows that Olive wants the big wedding, so the whole family secretly flies in, and it's a lot of fun. I actually like this one more than The Unhoneymooners, so I give this one 4 stars. The interesting thing about this novella is that it's got a full cast. Like, every single character has a different narrator, and one of them is Harry Shum Jr. Right now though, the novella is only available as an audio, I think. There's no ebook yet, but you can listen to it for free on the Audible Plus catalog. The romance is super cute. It's the classic maid of honor falls for the best man. There's not too much drama going on besides the wedding, but even though Ami and Brody are total opposites, they worked really well together. Plus, if you love The Unhoneymooners, you'll be very happy to see a lot of Olive and Ethan. My next read was another sort of beachy read. This is The Summer Girl by Elle Kennedy. This is book 3 in the Avalon Bay series, which has been okay. I don't love it, but I keep reading it because it's Elle Kennedy. This newest one was pretty cute. It's nothing particularly amazing, but still pretty enjoyable to read. It's like a very easy kind of read that you get through quickly just because of how simple it is, which is sometimes the kind of read that I'm in the mood for. It's like a palate cleanser. The Summer Girl is a friends to lovers romance, which is one of my favorite tropes. In this one, we have a hero who is basically the town man whore, but he's a very nice man whore. Cassie, the heroine, is in college, but she returns to Avalon Bay after many years because her grandmother is selling their boardwalk hotel to the heroine from book 1. When Cassie arrives in this little beach town, she really wants a summer fling, but she actually gets rejected by Tate. Normally he'd be all about a summer fling, but he likes Cassie too much to do that to her, so they become friends. He friend zones her. They start developing this cute little friendship, and Tate does feel regret because he's starting to fall very hard for her. I enjoyed the friendship aspect here a lot, though surprisingly I wasn't as much of a fan as the romance. I just didn't really fall in love with it. The characters were okay. They just weren't all that interesting. And plus, we're 3 books into the series now, and I was really hoping to feel more of a connection to the small town, but I don't. And normally I love a good friendship group, and there is one in the series, but again, I'm just not feeling much for it, but it's still an easy summer beach read, so I give it 3 stars. Another Audible novella that I listened to is Coming Home by Kennedy Ryan. If you know me, you know how much I love Kennedy, so obviously I had to listen to this one. I gave it 4 stars. It's this really sweet second chance romance where the characters weren't actually together back in college, but they were friends and they wanted to be more, but they went off to their separate ways. Naomi and Teray both went on to be these high-profile journalists, and now they reunite about 2 decades later. I'm always impressed when I read a Kennedy Ryan novella because she manages to write such a full, well-rounded book in so few pages. Both the main characters were really interesting. They had a lot of great chemistry even 2 decades later. They still have so much passion for not just each other but also for their jobs. The novella is set around homecoming for the hero's daughter. She's in high school, and because of his job he hasn't always been there for his daughter, so he wants to change that. But I loved how there was an actual band that was incorporated into this novella towards the end. Like, you can hear the music and everything at the homecoming, so I thought that was a really nice touch. This is definitely one of the better audiobooks on the Audible Plus catalog. I also had to download and listen to the 3 Holiday Brothers novellas by Will and Nash. You can listen to all 3 of them for free on the Audible Plus catalog. They are all very short, very quick reads, and yes, they are Christmas romances. I know it's a little bit early to start reading Christmas romances, but I had to make the most of my Audible deal, okay? I was trying to get to as many audiobooks as I could. The first one is The Naughty, the Nice, and the Nanny. So yes, it is a nanny romance. It's my favorite of the 3. I give this one 4 stars. It's a single dad romance with a very wealthy hero. Maddox was the guy that Natalie had a huge crush on back in high school. He never noticed her though, and when he graduated, he went on to be this very successful billionaire. But now he's back in their small town and he needs a nanny desperately because his daughter, as much as he loves her, she's a brat. So the heroine does get hired as the temporary nanny for the holidays, and it turns out she kind of rocks being the hero's daughter's babysitter. Maddox falls hard, the romance was adorable, and I did really enjoy how Natalie developed this really wonderful friendship with his daughter. And then book 2 is 3 Bells, 2 Bows, and 1 Brother's Best Friend. Obviously it is a brother's best friend romance, and unfortunately the series does go downhill from book 1. I did not like the second one as much, so I give this one 3 stars. It's about the second of the Holiday brothers, Heath, and we have yet another heroine who had a crush on the hero for forever. She finally gets her chance with him though when she ends up working at his construction company and he kisses her at his family's annual Christmas party. They get caught by the main characters from book 1, so the romances here do sort of overlap. The main reason why I didn't enjoy this one as much though was because of the hero and how he wanted to keep his relationship and his romance with Stella a secret from his family and also from his best friend, who is her brother. There are kind of valid reasons. I mean, I can see why he wanted to keep them a secret, but I still didn't really like it. I just didn't love how this played out, so 3 stars. And then the final novella about the final Holiday brother is A Partridge and a Pregnancy. So yes, a surprise pregnancy here. This was the one that I liked the least out of the 3, not because I don't like surprise pregnancy, because I do. I'm one of the few people I feel like who do like surprise pregnancy romances, but the reason why I gave this one 2 stars was because I did not like the main characters at all. Eva and Tobias have a one-night stand right before she has to move all the way to London for work, and she ends up pregnant from it. And the whole issue between them is that Eva wants to go to London because she wants this great work opportunity, and Tobias is like, no, I want you to stay here because you're having my baby. I didn't like either of them. They came across as very selfish and just didn't know how to compromise. It was very annoying to read, so I wasn't a fan. And then I finally read an arc that has not released yet. I feel like I've been terrible with reading arcs on time. I always end up getting to them after they release, but I read Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This was a very adorable read and so much better than Icebreaker. This is book 2 in the Maple Hill series about another member on the hockey team, though I would not call this one a hockey romance. It's actually more of a summer camp romance, so I'm a little surprised that it's coming out in the fall because this would be a great summer read. We have some more opposites here. The hero is a shy boy who likes to keep to himself. He is the sweetest, and the heroine is definitely more outgoing. She's a party girl, and they do actually meet at a party where they hook up. Aurora is normally the type to leave right away the next morning though, so she does leave before Russ can get her name or her number. They end up reuniting like literally the next day as new co-camp counselors. Neither of them knew that they were going to work together at the same camp, so it was very surprising that they saw each other again. But there's a lot of great awkward forced proximity because of this, and Russ and Aurora do try to stay friends. They don't want to break the no fraternization policy, so after their hook up in the beginning. It is a little bit slow between them, but their romance is super wholesome. They both do have a lot of issues, a lot of mommy and daddy issues, which I do feel like got resolved a little bit too easily at the end, but whatever. The summer camp aspect was great though, very nostalgic, even though I literally never went to summer camp, but it's got all the good summer vibes. You get to know all of the camp counselors, you even get to know some kids, and just all the fun things that they get up to. Honestly, I'm just glad that I like this one more than Icebreaker. The main characters here, they were just more likable, more developed here, so I'm giving it 4 stars. And then I also read another Kennedy Ryan book. I finally read Long Shot, which means that I finally finished up the Hoop series, which I have read completely out of order because the last book that I needed to read was this first book. To be fair though, I did try to read it back when it first came out, but I just was not in the right mindset to read about domestic violence, so I put it down and had not gone back to it until now. It was so good though, so painful to read, but still so worth it. It's a basketball romance with a sort of forbidden romance too, because when Iris and August first meet, they feel this instant spark. And what I love about Kennedy Ryan and how she writes her romances is how powerful the connection between the main characters always is. But even though their connection is very powerful, nothing actually comes out of it because Iris has a boyfriend who is August's biggest rival. Iris is in this long-term relationship with a basketball player named Caleb, but the relationship has been slowly going downhill. The first half of this book is all about Iris and her abusive relationship with her boyfriend. It did not start out abusive at all, but it slowly devolves into something violent and awful. He physically assaults her, he gaslights her, he sexually assaults her, and he makes it so hard for her to leave, especially when she gets pregnant. It's so vicious for her, and you also want to feel frustrated because you're like, just leave him, but she can't. My heart was breaking for her this whole time, but thankfully the second half of this book is all about Iris and her healing. She's taking care of herself, her child, and just learning how to be loved the right way by August. The romance is beautiful, but the book itself is a whole journey. It takes a lot out of you when you read it, and also do please check for any trigger warnings if you want to read this one. Next up, I read a couple fantasy romances. This first one is actually a reread. I reread Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I talked all about it in my fantasy romance reading vlog, so I won't go over too much about it, especially since I already did a wrap up with this book, but I am keeping my 4-star rating for this one for my reread. I did appreciate seeing all the little tidbits that I missed during my first read, and once again, I love the dragons in this book so much. The dragons were the highlight of this book and the main reason why I enjoyed it so much. I did love the world building. I do like Violet, even though she frustrates me occasionally. If you are one of the few people who still has not read this one, I would say give it a try. It's definitely a fun read, and plus, there are dragons. Another fantasy romance that I read for my reading vlog was The Crown of Oaths and Curses by Bree. I finally got to reading this one. I had such high expectations because of how much I love the Bonds That Tie series, but the Mortal Fate series is very different. First off, it's not reverse harem, it's not White Shoes, it is MF. It's also fantasy, high fantasy. We have witches and fae, all different sorts of beings, but the main ones are witches and fae. The heroine is a witch and the hero is fae. Soren is actually a prince of one of the kingdoms. He's the heir to the throne, but his evil uncle has taken the throne, and Soren can't get it back until he finds his fate's blessed mate, who is Rook, the heroine, but unfortunately for him, she is also a witch who have slowly become eradicated by the fae, by Soren, because of this curse that the witches put on the fae. And also there's another super evil witch out there, but there's a lot going on in this book. There's a ton of world building. It's a lot. The first half of this book is actually quite boring. I struggled with it a bit. I just did not get invested until I got to the second half, part 2 of this book, which is so much better. So if you're thinking about reading this or you've started reading this, just know that the first part is going to be very slow, but the second half is going to be worth the wait. The ending especially was absolutely epic. I loved it, but the book is very much a first book in a new fantasy series, so we gotta put as much info dumping as we can. The romance romance is glacial. It is very, very slow burn in the sense that there isn't much of a romance. It's enemies to lovers, but this entire first book is just focused on the enemies part, because when Soren and Rook finally meet, he ends up kidnapping her. Overall though, I give this one 4 stars. Even though the first half was a struggle, I love the second half so much, so it still saved the book for me. I read an Elsie Silver book next. I read her debut, Off to the Races. My library happened to get the audiobook of this one, so I thought I'd give it a try, see how it compares to the Chestnut Spring series. I like this one. It was pretty good for a debut. I'm like in between 3.5 and 4 stars. It's another small town cowboy romance from her. It definitely seems like that is her niche right now. It's book 1 in the Gold Rush Ranch series, and if you love horses in your books, you will love this one. I've come to realize I'm not much of a horse book girl, but I didn't mind it too much here. It worked for me just because of how much fun I had with it. The heroine, Billy, she gets hired as the new horse trainer at Vaughn's ranch, and unfortunately she gets a terrible first impression of him. First of all, Vaughn thought that Billy was gonna be a man when he hired her because of her name, and second, when she shows up at the ranch, she shows up for her first day of work, he thinks that she is some floozy that his mom is trying to set him up with, so he tells her off. Even after this though, even after he realizes that he's in the wrong, he is annoyingly stubborn about Billy and thinks that she doesn't have what it takes to make it on this ranch. There's a lot of animosity and banter between them, which was a lot of fun to read, and even though they're now boss and employee, they still can't stand each other. Things do eventually start changing when Billy is able to tame this wild stallion that no one has been able to get close to at the ranch. Vaughn starts seeing her differently and he wants her bad. Again, for a debut, it was really good, but you can definitely see how much she's improved with the Chestnut Spring series if you read her newest series. But if you do like her latest series, you'll probably also like her earlier books just because they're pretty much in the same vein. It's got the small town vibe, it also has a strong heroine and a hot cowboy. And then I feel like I always end up reading at least one historical romance a month. I really want to read more, but this month I read The Wolf and the Wildflower by Stacey Reed. This one was 3.5 stars for me. Not my favorite Stacey Reed, and also I kind of expected something differently or a little bit more from it, but it's still not a bad read. I was mainly intrigued by this one though because the hero has been living in the wild for a very long time until he's found and brought back to society and has to become a duke. And if that wasn't enough, the heroine, Jules, she grew up as a boy, and everyone, including her father, believes that she is now a man. Her mother did have her reasons for making everyone believe Jules was a boy, but Jules is still able to take advantage of being a man because she is a psychologist. Jules and her father are hired to sort of help James re-enter into society to take on the role of Duke, even though he really wants nothing to do with it. James pretty much instantly figures out that Jules is a woman. He has gained these very primal instincts while being out in the wild, so he's able to sniff her out. So the whole premise was super intriguing, very unique, but I guess when I went into this one, I was expecting a little bit more of the wilderness part for the hero, but we didn't get much of that, and also there was no angst with Jules being a man when it came to the relationship just because James already knew what she was. I had some different expectations for this book, so I am a little sad that I didn't love it more. Next up, I continued with my Audible Plus catalog and I read Crimes of Passion by Jack Harbin. This is an MM romance between two rival true crime podcasters, which is such a great premise. Emery and Calvin do not like each other because even though they're both true crime podcasters, Emery thinks that Calvin takes things way too seriously with all the history that he incorporates into his podcast. He just thinks Calvin is boring, whereas Calvin thinks Emery is too blasé about all the things he talks about. He doesn't like how Emery turns everything into a joke, but they do end up working together. They do a collab because of a late fan's request who love them both, and because of this collab, they slowly start to realize that there's a lot more to the other person than they thought. Their banter is silly and snarky, and their nicknames for each other is hilarious. It was very short. It felt like I focused too much on the podcast, the true crime part, and then the romance, but I still liked liked it enough and I gave it 3 stars. Another fantasy romance that I read was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I finally read this author for the first time and I really liked it. I didn't love it as much as everyone else did. I always seem to be the type of person who likes a hyped book but doesn't love it as much as everyone else does. But still, for my first read from Carissa Broadbent, this was great. I give it 4 stars. It's the first book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. It's a fantasy romance with vampires who also have wings. Araya is a human who was adopted as a young girl by the vampire king, and she's grown up learning how to fight and defend herself. She enters this very dangerous fighting competition so she can win and gain this favor, this gift from their goddess. She pretty much wants to be more powerful than the human that she is. One of the other contestants is Rain, our vampire hero. He was an interesting hero. He had his grumpy moments, but he also liked to crack some jokes. We didn't actually get to know too much about him in this first book. There's this huge reveal at the end about who he is, so his whole identity is kept a secret for a majority of this book. But Rain and Araya have this very slow burn romance. Nothing really happens until they start to team up along with Rain's best friend. They all work together to survive and be the last one standing. Personally, I wasn't a huge fan of the ending. Like, yes, it is a big twist, but I just didn't feel the impact of it. But the writing is solid, and I did really like the heroine. My next 2 books are some of my favorite reads of the month. This one is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This was a 4.5 star read for me. I adored it so much. It is one of my favorites from Abby Jimenez. Not my top favorite, but it's still up there. This is a romance between 2 doctors who have an awful first impression of each other. Jacob is a new hire at Brianna's hospital, and she doesn't like him because she thinks that he is an easy shoo-in for the promotion that she really wants just because he's a man and friendly with the higher-ups. And then his first impression of her is her not looking where she's going and bumping into him rudely, not even apologizing. So it's a rough start for them, but they eventually settle things out. And then the cuteness starts when he writes her a letter. They leave letters to each other at work and it is so adorable. They talk about the most random things, the most heartfelt things, and this is how they start falling for each other. It's like an epistolary romance, which I absolutely love. But there's also a lot going on outside of the romance too. Like Brianna, she's struggling because her brother desperately needs a kidney donor. She also just got a divorce from her cheating ex. And then Jacob is dealing with some intense anxiety, all while his ex is now getting married to his brother. The outside drama is crazy, which leads to some fake dating here because Jacob wants a fake girlfriend to get his family off his back, that he is totally fine with his brother marrying his ex. The fake dating here was so good. There was so much longing and pining. They were both desperate for each other, but didn't want to make that first move. The romance is just so soft and sweet. It definitely gives you the warm and fuzzy feeling. So I loved it. It's definitely one of my favorite reads of this year. Another favorite read of mine is The Right Move by Liz Tomforde. I love this one. It's like 4.5, maybe 5 stars. It's up there for me. It was long, but so good. I adore these characters so much. It's actually very similar to Yours Truly in a way, but also very different. I was reading these side by side, like I was listening to Yours Truly in audio and then reading The Right Move on my Kindle, and they were both about heroines who got cheated on, and they both had fake dating. But again, it's very different because The Right Move is a sports romance. The hero is a professional basketball player. Ryan is literally one of the biggest names in the NBA right now, and because of his fame, he keeps everyone except for his twin sister at a distance. So he is not happy when his twin offers up his spare room to her best friend because she needs a place to stay after leaving her cheating ex. Indy is Ryan's total opposite. He likes order, he likes things in their place, and Indy is pure chaos. He does eventually let her stay in exchange for her becoming his fake girlfriend for a little bit to impress his general manager. They go to these events together and pretend to be this lovey-dovey couple. They even get invited to the GM's mountain house. They have to pretend to be together in public, all while slowly their feelings are becoming real. I loved Ryan so much. He is just the purest guy. He's such a good guy, but I did love all the scenes where he becomes all jealous and possessive over Indy. It's funny because he's clueless about why he's feeling those things. But yes, their romance is so wonderful. They were adorable and so perfect together. They balanced each other out perfectly. It was just so good. Very long though, I will say. I made it about halfway through and I was like, wait, there's still more. But even though it's a long read, it is worth all those pages. And then the final book that I read is by an author that I have not read in a very long time. This is After the Climb by Kristen Ashley. I used to be a Kristen Ashley fangirl. I loved all of her older stuff, but it's been a hot minute since I read a book by her. After the Climb was one of the freebies on the Audible Plus catalog, so I thought I'd give it a try. And it wasn't too bad. It did remind me a lot of OG Kristen Ashley, but it was also not the best either. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. Like, there were some good things, but also some very annoying things. It's the first book in the River Rain series, and we have an older couple here. It's a second chance romance between Imogen and Duncan, and the reason why they broke up like 20 plus years ago was because of their best friend Corey, who has just passed away. Upon his passing, they read a letter written by him telling them the truth about what happened all those years ago. He made up a lie that Imogen cheated on Duncan with Corey, and Duncan believed him because he was his best friend. They were all best friends actually, but Corey was always jealous of Duncan because he was the one who wanted Imogen. So it's a very messy threesome. Imogen's heart was completely broken over this, but in the decades since, they had both moved on, both gotten married, formed families. Now in present day though, they are divorced, and once they read this letter, Duncan is all in winning Imogen back. I did appreciate Imogen making it difficult for Duncan to do this, just because he definitely should not have just instantly believed the lies that his best friend made. Jenny was supposedly the love of his life, but he chose not to believe her. That never sat right with me, and plus I honestly don't think that Duncan would have ever gone after Imogen without Corey's letter. It's a very family-oriented book. If you love a lot of family members getting involved in the main characters, you'll probably like this one. Imogen's daughter is actually the instigator of getting her mother back with Duncan. There's a lot of point of views in this book. I didn't feel like it was really necessary. We get both main characters plus Imogen's daughter plus Corey. It made it a lot longer than it needed to be, but still, I did like some parts of it. I did believe in their second chance romance just because it's very clear how obsessed Duncan is with Jenny. Also, I just realized this is yet another book where the heroine gets cheated on by her significant other, so that was a lot of fun to read back-to-back books about that. But the vibes of this one, again, it reminded me a bit of OG Kristen Ashley, and I do occasionally reread some of her older books. This one wasn't amazing, but I still liked it, and plus it's free on Audible Plus. And that's a wrap on my August wrap-up. Those were all 17 books that I read last month. Let me know if you've read any of these books that I mentioned. I would love to hear your thoughts. I also just posted my fall TBR video, so let me know what you think of the books that I want to read soon. As always, links to everything will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!